Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about the impact of a pollinator garden. Now, we're going to imagine two people walking down a street. One of them is surrounded by plants with the sound of bees and hummingbirds buzzing through the air and butterflies collecting nectar. The other is surrounded by concrete buildings and cars rumbling by on overcrowded streets. The person who is surrounded by natural beauty is experiencing the fabulous sounds of our most important pollinators, while the one person in the concrete jungle is being constantly bombarded by the jazz of gasoline and pedestrians hurrying through the forest we call cities. Only the sparse tree or random garden adorn the landscape in his world. I aim to change your mind about wanting to live without a small slice of nature in your life and encourage you to plant a pollinator garden. Everyone is familiar with both of those types of environments, and they notice both of them, how noisy it is or how peaceful it can be when you have a garden. My research has spanned several cities, including talking to people at several libraries who have put up programs with pollinators for bees especially. I also work at the San Diego Zoo and in my own garden, as well as having several websites to back up my sources. So we'll focus on 3 topics: what happens when you don't have a pollinator garden, how to plant a friendly pollinator garden, and the long-term effects of having a pollinator garden. A world without pollinators is a world without the big selection of produce in the grocery stores that we see at our local Walmart or Target or places like that. On a small scale, however, not having a pollinator garden can be detrimental too. When you don't have pollinator-friendly plants, you limit the amount of resources that are available to the bees, birds, and butterflies, bats, as well as other animals that help sustain the natural ecosystem that is your backyard and is community too. We need to be more conscious of the effects pollinators have in our gardens and plant more with them in mind. Drastic effects can occur in just your own backyard where flowering plants for the native pollinators are scarce. In an article by the USDA titled "The Importance of Our Pollinators," pollinators that can't find the right quantity or quality of food, which is going to be nectar, pollen, and insects in that area, from blooming plants within the flight range, don't survive. Right now, there simply aren't enough pollinator-friendly plantings to support them. I used to live in an area currently right now where most of the urbanization is not centered around pollinators and flowering plants. It is reserved for agriculture. In recent years, there has been a lot of development in this area too. I live in Meridian, Idaho, currently right now. People around us plant non-flowering trees and shrubs and stuff, and everybody has low-cut grass in their yards and backyards and stuff like that. Again, another issue. North Lake City in Illinois published an article called "Creating a Pollinator Garden," which says one of the biggest problems is our obsession with lawns. Without flowers of any kind, these homogeneous species are useless in terms of nutrition for pollinators. Adding on to that, crop too short, they don't provide cover or nesting habitat either, which is a crucial building block for many species of native bees, which build solitary homes in the ground. Now we see some of the detrimental consequences of not having a pollinator garden in even your own growing space. So we're going to take a look at how you can go about planting a native pollinator garden. Let's take a look at how you can do that. Ideally, you should plant for your area, which means that instead of getting these hybrid flowers and hybrid plants and plants from other countries that, yeah, may look pretty, but do not benefit the soil or the pollinators in your native area, do not buy those big hybrid plants essentially. So at big commercial nurseries, this is going to be the case. A lot of those big commercial nurseries have those exotic plants from other countries and different areas of the world and stuff, but they do have a section for native stuff. Now, it's pretty common to have a section for native stuff. I don't think I've been to a nursery where they haven't had that. Obviously, do not collect from the wild because that is 100% illegal. Mark Hines posted an article for UGA Research in February of 2019 where he quotes Anya Majowska. We predicted that gardens with native plant species would benefit pollinators more compared to non-native plantings. Mara Koenig wrote an article for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service called How to Build a Pollinator Garden, in which she says it is essential to choose plants that have not been treated with pesticides as well. Insecticides or neonicotinoids, which is a neuroactive insecticide. It affects and controls the nervous system of bees, butterflies, all those native pollinators in your area, and it paralyzes them. So she also says you want to focus on selecting perennials to ensure your plants come back each year and don't require a lot of maintenance. Adding to the maintenance portion is the shape and soil type of your garden. This is going to be specific to you and what you want. So I haven't mentioned anything about how you should do it or how you should go about preparing the soil yet. A lot of nurseries are very helpful with that kind of stuff. So just make sure to do your research because it is quite fun to actually learn about this kind of stuff. So then another pro tip for selecting plants, I found Anne Bailach wrote in her article 10 tips for starting a pollinator garden. The best way to keep pollinators nourished all season long is to include a mix of annuals, perennials, and shrubs in your pollinator garden. Many warm season annuals bloom all summer, and this will help sustain pollinators where there are lulls between the bloom periods of different perennials and shrubs. In my backyard, I have plants that are blooming. I have plants that are not blooming. I have trees. The trees have not produce flowers yet right now. They're fruit trees, but eventually they will. So let's say you've already started or finished building your pollinator garden. Now we can take a look at the long-term effects of having a garden dedicated to pollinators like this. Imagine yourself without a home to feel safe and get food from. Pollinators need the same thing. When you have a pollinator garden, you're providing the essential building materials for these animals to thrive in your environment. You also promote your native habitats by creating a diverse ecosystem that can benefit everybody for years. A second effect is rising numbers in pollinators such as bees and bats. Bees in recent years, especially in Idaho, have seen a drastic decline in their population. Ryan Fitzgerald of Rayleigh Realty Group wrote in a blog titled Top 7 Gardening Statistics and Trends in 2024, which he says about 55% of U.S. households have a garden. This translates to about 71.5 million gardening households and 185.9 million people If we can raise these numbers significantly, we have a shot at bringing the pollinators' population up and reverse the decline they've seen over the last few decades. If more and more people get involved in planting a native pollinator garden, the effort of animals having to travel further away is greatly reduced as well, which also increases mortality rates by a bee having to travel from a garden over here to a garden that's like 5 miles away. So, according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, migratory pollinators face special challenges. If the distance between the suitable habitat patches along their migration route is too great, smaller, weaker individuals will die during their journey. So persuading many people in your area to have a pollinator garden is very important. And I hopefully have succeeded in trying to persuade you all to have a pollinator garden today. We looked at the effects of not even having a small pollinator garden in your backyard. We then talked about how you can go about selecting plants for your garden. Finally, I mentioned the long-term effects of having a pollinator garden and how you would help to ensure the pollinator population is healthy. We take the time to notice the small things in our environment. We benefit greatly from it also. I want to be the person walking down the street I don't want to be the person walking down the street with no green spaces. Just scraggly areas that adorn some streets and small trees or patches of grass here and there. I want to maximize any growing space for pollinator gardens. Steve Irwin once said in The Crocodile Hunter, The Incredible Life and Adventures of Steve and Terry Irwin, we don't own the planet Earth. We belong to it, and we must share it with our wildlife. I hope you enjoyed this speech about pollinator gardens, and I hope to have encouraged you to plant one yourself. Thank you for letting me speak, and have a good day.